welcome to Catch You Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modis. This podcast is about living and playing in the great outdoors, especially down here in the most southern region of the continental United States, the Florida Keys. Catch You Outdoors hosted by Spotify, also brought to you by your favorite podcast network. So kick back and get a taste of my Florida. This week's episode of Catch You Outdoors is number 123, titled Another Week in the Keys. Hello, all. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it might be, wherever you are. Tomorrow, yesterday. Yeah, you never know, right? I do have people listen over in Europe, so they could be on a different day, actually, depending on what time. I'm going to ad-lib today. This could be short. I have some notes written, but this was the reason I call it Another Week in the Keys. It was a typical week, in a way, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to make minimum notes this time around instead of, I don't ever do extensive notes. I put little blurbs in so I don't forget to talk about something. But today is just, I don't know, it feels different. I don't know how to explain it. It just does. It got nice and warm this past week. Maybe that's part of it. Temperatures in the mid-80s. We came really close to breaking some winter records, actually. Up in the Miami and Fort Lauderdale area, they got, I think it was 87, which was 88's the highest it's ever been. So I thought that was interesting. The wind, however, continued to blow until late today. This is Sunday. It's going to keep blowing. And actually, there's another front coming through. That's we'll get to that in just a second. So the wind continued to blow, but we had really, really warm weather. And we had minimal, almost no rain. Matter of fact, I've gone back to having to run outside and water some of the plants and give the orchids a drink. So, and that's been very unusual this winter. We've had a lot of rain. But we have another front coming. Today, as I said, is Sunday. By 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, it's supposed to start getting kind of yucky again. And then we're supposed to have some rain, minimal rain move in. And temperatures are going to drop precipitously. Wow. I'll be okay. Don't worry. So you folks up north, would you kindly stop sending that crap down here? Please just quit. I think the low temperature on Tuesday is going to be dangerously close to 49. I know Miami's talking about 40s, especially inland. So that means it will get close to us. The thing about the Keys is we're protected by a whole mess of water, and that water helps keep the ambient temperature up. So I'm going to make a wild stab at it and say we're going to see maybe 50 on Tuesday morning, maybe 51 or 2. So whoop-de-doodle. Yeah. So, however, the good news is the windy day will be Monday, tomorrow. And then it's supposed to slacken off and come around the clock a little bit. So that will help slow things down. And I'll probably do my best to get out in midweek. Maybe late Tuesday is a possibility, more likely a Wednesday, Thursday type time frame for doing some fishing. Or I might try to do 2. We'll just see what happens and how it goes. I don't think it's going to drop water temperatures in the back all that much because it's not going to be cold enough long enough. But we are going to have what I consider to be a chilly week. We're going to have, let's see, hang on a second. Let me look at my little page where I wrote temperatures down. Here we go. Tuesday's high 68, Wednesday's is 70, Thursday 69, Friday 70, Saturday 73, and Sunday 75. The lows for that entire week should be right around 60 degrees. So we're going to have like a 50-something on Tuesday morning. Then from that point on, the low is going to be 60, 61. So that's not really enough to affect the water temperatures all that much, and especially if the wind doesn't blow and the sun comes out. And it sounds to me like we're going to get some of that. So it's about time we get into a real winter pattern because normally winter is no rain, and we just had tons of rain, and it's also bright, sunny, beautiful skies with almost no clouds, and we've had exactly the opposite. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll keep fingers crossed, and you can cross them with me if you don't mind. So anyway, I am hoping to get out on the water about midweek. Tides are pretty good. Considering the fact that we've passed full moon now and we're working on a waning moon, means it's shrinking. But it still looks pretty good for fishing, to tell you the truth. The tidal movement is still good. The tides this week are going to be high in the morning and low in the afternoon. So you're going to start out, like if you go out early-ish, you're going to have a high tide. And so it's a morning high, anywhere from mid to late morning, and then dropping off. There's not going to be much of a low early in the day. Let's just put it that way. Low will be in the afternoon. But that still looks pretty good for fishing, because the moon itself, the moon event, even though we have a new moon coming up on the 9th of February, and we're not that far from that. We're almost done with January. Just a few more days, we're done with January. So as we move toward February, we'll start to get the new moon, which, for all intents and purposes, where I fish back in the backcountry, doesn't really matter a whole lot between that and full as far as water movement is concerned. So keep my fingers crossed. I got guests coming on that week, right on those dates, as a matter of fact. So, and I'm hoping we can get out there and have a lot of fun in the back. Yes, I have to put my guide hat back on. Tourist and snowbird numbers are way up. That became really evident this weekend. We're approaching the full inundation of the Florida Keys starting in February and March. I mean, that's really, spring break / springtime / wintertime, all just sort of hit at once. And I've been a party of that for many, many years, especially in Fort Myers, who had a true spring break beach out there on Fort Myers Beach. And, of course, Fort Lauderdale, which also had great big spring break crowds. So I'm used to seeing it. The Keys aren't, as far as I could tell last year, there were not a lot of quote, kids in town. The college kids getting out for spring break, or even late high school type stuff. I didn't see much of that, to be honest with you. Down here, it's a bit more laid back. I imagine that obviously Key West is, but Key West is always like that. It doesn't, you don't differentiate in Key West much between what I call spring breakers and whatever everybody else. The spring breakers down there are just older. Yeah, they're in their 40s and 50s acting like spring breakers. So it's a little different down that way. But if you're planning on coming down, man, you better book. You better do it now. And I'm not just talking about a room, which could get tricky at this point. We just went down to Key West. I'll get to that in a minute. We booked up in Marathon. We stayed in Marathon, which is about not quite an hour drive south once you're in Marathon. And there's quite a lot of availability of what I call regular hotels and rooms, so something to look at if you're coming down. But you better book like your boat tours and snorkeling tours and dolphin watches and fishing trips. I mean, seriously, I see these people post on the web all the time. I follow a few pages, tourism pages, and I follow some stuff from fishing pages. And you get these, we're coming down next weekend. Who can we hire to fish? And I'm thinking, you ain't going to hire nobody to fish next weekend. No, you're not. So here's the bridges you can fish from. That's usually the answer they get anyway. I don't have to say a word. People are like, okay, you're going to be fishing from the bridges, or you're going to be fishing from shore, or you're going to have to go rent a kayak if you can find one, that kind of stuff. So anyway. Fishing report, I don't have one, not a personal one anyway. But I do want to talk about what Jonelle and I did Saturday. And we went to the Saltwater Sportsman Seminar Series with George Bovaromo down in Islamorada. It was an entire day of seminars about fishing the waters around the Florida Keys. And it was funny. We went to this was the 37th year for the seminar. So I got to figure we must have gone to about the 10th one. Because we went in 1997. I'm only guessing on this, but it sounds about right. We went to one in Miami, one of the early ones in Miami, and really enjoyed it. And the speakers he had, that was back when he had Bouncer Smith and some of these wild, crazy, great guides out of Miami. And I listened intently, and Jonelle carried a notepad and made notes on everything because we were brand new to fishing the waters around here. I'm a West Coast boy from West Coast, Florida. I don't know crap about fishing the ocean or the backcountry over here. And so we started. That's where we started. That's where our education started, was at one of those seminars. And quite frankly, we learned a lot. And we carried that over to Islamorada, where we kept a boat, and we started experimenting with fishing in Florida Bay. And as I like to tell everybody 7 or 8 or 9 times, we did not have a GPS. Back then, you had a chart, and you put it in your lap, and you mapped your way across water. that was very tricky. Florida Bay is tricky with the GPS and your eyeballs, much less just trying to use a chart to get across the thing. Janelle and I were talking the other day about getting caught in the fog out there one morning. It was hilarious. We got out there and ran right into this monster fog bank. And we sat there for an hour or two, waiting to get just enough visibility to actually see where we were going. It's not a place to be without a GPS in the fog. I will say that. But it was a learning curve, and it was a lot of fun. So when I went to this, I was pretty pleased while listening to the presenters. I thought, well, I know that kind of thing. I've got enough of an education now in the Keys over the last 25, 26, 27 years or so of fishing in the Keys, of learning it and understanding it. And I've talked a lot about up here, how it's different. Key Largo is still a learning curve for me. So when I say this, I'm talking about Islamorada. So I'm talking about the Middle Keys south. So Islamorada on down to Key West. And I'm pretty good at all those areas. And what they were talking about hit home. But what I was paying special attention to were a couple of captains that were up this way that were talking about the lower Biscayne Bay, Florida Bay on this side, the eastern Florida Bay, as well as the patch reefs outside of Key Largo. And I did pick up a few things. I mean, I'm not sitting here patting myself on the back going, I know it all. I don't. And I readily admit that. You never know it all when you fish. Even when I was on the West Coast, you still learn stuff almost every other day. You find something interesting, new, or hanging around other captains, you learn all kinds of tidbits. Like, I didn't know that. Where was that? That kind of thing. That's the kind of conversation that happened over beer. And so I was sitting there going, okay, and Janelle's got a notepad. She hadn't written a lot on it. And then all of a sudden we hit the jackpot. They were talking a lot about going out after mutton snapper and yellowtail and stuff like that, which I have done, and I've done it successfully. I've caught some, but I wanted the tidbits. I don't want to know where. I want to know how. And I want to know the tackle that you use and the way that you get it done. And it was really cool because these guys had about 5 different ways to set tackle up and 5 different baits to use. Everything from cut baits to live bait to, much more imagination than I was using. Let's put it that way. So I learned that. That was really, really great. I also have never done deep jigging. And for those that don't know what that is, I knew what it was, but for those of us that don't know how to do it or don't know what it is, basically these are jigs. They're very colorful. They're at the shortest maybe 3 inches long. Some are 4, some are 7 or 8 or 9 inches long. They're heavy. I mean heavy, as in a pound heavy or more. In ounces, they might be 6 to 8 ounces. And they're slender, brightly colored, and they have a funny hook attachment. It's hard to describe unless you go look one up. So look up deep water jigging. I might try to find one, take a picture. I usually post a few pictures with my podcast. I think I have one in the garage. I think I'll grab it, take a photo, and throw it up there for you. But it's got a funny attachment on it with a little tail that hangs off and then a hook that hooks to it. And the object is you drop it down into 50, 60, 70 feet of water. One guy said 70 was his heartbeat. And I thought, okay, I'll go with that because I caught a few fish in 70 feet. And he would say not 65 and not 75, but 70. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll buy that. Drop the jig down, bounce it off the bottom good and hard. Bang it, lift it up, bang it, lift it up. They show different ways of lifting to get more action out of the jig, that kind of stuff. Bait on it if you want to, put a little bit of squid on it if you want, but really it sounded to me like not absolutely necessary, but it would be a good idea to tip it with something. And they catch really, really nice fish, particularly mutton snapper, which is what I was interested in, and other fish doing this deep water jigging, grouper and all kinds of things. So that was my learn. That was my big learn. It's actually something I have not included in this book and probably won't, because I don't know a lot about it. And I try to, when I impart things within the book, I do want to at least let you know that I've tried it and I've done it. And I'm not right at that point with jigging yet, but I'm interested. And so that was a lot of fun. The other thing that popped up was electronics. They always talk about electronics during these seminars and the use of electronics. And I have this really nice fancy-ass Simrad in my dash. And it's a really great GPS / depth finder, fish finder, bottom finder, whatever you want to call it. And I love the thing. The quality of the video picture is great. You can see everything that's going on. But I primarily use it to get from point A to B out on the reefs. So that's really my fishing spot, if you will, that I've marked. And then in the back, if the fog rolls in or it gets really cruddy, to find my way around in bad light, I guess I should say. I don't usually do dark. So in just half light or early morning, or, sometimes when you're looking across the bay and it's hazy in the morning, you're looking for that tiny little cut. It's really great to have a GPS because it's already pinpointed and just aim at it. In the good old days, you went across the bay until you got close, and then you squinted until you got closer to hopefully find the opening. And the openings are pretty small around here to get through some of the cuts that you want to run through. And you don't want to miss because you run aground. And if you run aground, boy, that's a cardinal sin in the Everglades National Park. You do not run aground unless you are fond of fines. And the fines are steep, not to mention the embarrassment. So I don't want to go in either spot. So that's where the GPS comes in. Well, I found fish out there by looking through the depth finder, as I have always done, not knowing a lot about the side view, sideband, side scan. That's what the word I was looking for. So essentially the transducer and forward scan. The transducer has the ability, this fancy little thing that hangs underneath the boat and tells you where you are and what you're over. And it also tells you water temperature, things like that. It has the ability to look sideways, not just straight down, but sideways and forward. This is really a novel idea. Not new to me. I've heard of it. I don't want to say it was brand new, like, I just discovered it. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it did. And I always pictured it as someone using it to look under docks while they're fishing for fish, which, by the way, they do. But with a standard transducer, you're looking down at a reef or a spot. And as you're cruising along in your boat and you see something underneath you, look at that nice bump. Well, that bump is gone. In other words, if you're moving at 3 miles an hour, just kind of tootling along, and you see something go by the time the transducer reads it and fires the information back and your eye sees it on the screen, you're just about past it. They aren't that. The depth finders are wonderful, but they're not great enough to do stop action, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's not like watching a video as you're going over. There's a little time change there. So you have to mark it immediately and then go back and do a couple sweeps to find the spot again. Side scan's a little different. Side scan shows you exactly what's happening beside the boat as you go by because of the way that it's angled and the way that it looks slightly forward, which is kind of neat. But the most important thing I learned about it was there are guys that are using it in backcountry fishing ditches. And I was like, really? So here's what I learned about it for me personally. I go back in the back and I go into a trench, pretty good sized trench, 5 feet deep, where I've been catching sea trout. And hopefully reds and hopefully snook, whatever might be lying in there. And you go in there one day and you catch a whole bunch of fish. And you come back the next day or 2 or 3 or the next week and you don't catch any. You don't even get a bite. And then you come back 3 weeks later and you go, okay, I'm going to try that again because it really sucked last time. But you got to give it a chance because I did catch fish there once. And you catch some fish. You're like, okay, what the hell's going on? Well, the side scan is a really cool instrument for telling you where the fish really are. And what I mean by that is I already know that fish move around. They move around because bait moves around. And bait moves around because of water quality, water temperature, and wind. That's really what bait is all about. Bait's little, and it will die easily if it gets in water that is unsuitable. So you go and you fish a spot in a trench, and there's lots of fish, and you're like, man, this is awesome. And then you come back and they're not there, but they are really there. They're just not there. Does that make sense? What happens is the wind or the water quality is slightly off in that particular spot, or there's nothing. It's just not right for the bait, so they move. Well, they don't ever move far. Now, I kind of knew that because of red fishing along the southwest coast of Florida. You can go to your, quote, redfish spot. And if there's one really there, that's kind of a miracle, to tell you the truth, unless your timing is exactly the way it was last time you caught one there. But in most cases, the redfish move up and down. But guess what? Redfish will be in that area. You go 25 yards either way of your mark of what you think they should be in, they'll be there. I mean, eventually you will find them in the same general location. Well, it turns out on the open flats, it's the same sort of deal. The trench is there, but what the fish are doing is they're simply following a ball of bait. And they're following that bait because the bait wasn't happy where it was. So it moved over 2 trenches away, or it moved over to 6 feet of water, or it moved to 4 feet of water nearby. And guess what? If you turn on side scan, you can actually see the ball of bait. Ta-da! It was like, and they had a picture up on the screen. I'm like, oh my God, that's so easy. So you see that I'm telling you, this new electronic stuff is like cheating. It really is. So you go out and you go to your spot and you turn on side scan if you're not getting a bite, and you watch the side scan as you go along slowly, like with the trolling motor, real nice, a mile an hour or less. And you look out to the right, and you will literally see the cloud of bait. You'll see the puff ball out there. And it's like, okay. And then you move over in that direction, quietly make your drift, and guess what? That's probably where the fish are located that day. So that was a big learning curve for me. I like that. I like it when I go to something and you got your chest all puffed out because you think you know it. And you don't. And I've always said that about fishing. Just about the time you got it figured out, you don't. And that's pretty much what happened to me there. So that was really great. I really enjoyed that, and I really got something out of it. And there's something else about the saltwater seminars that are really, really wonderful. They're called the bucket. And you'll keep hearing about this over and over again. You get a bucket of goodies when you sign up. And the bucket is worth the sign-up price or more in most cases. Sign up for this, I think it was $65 a person. The bucket has got boat washes and boat cleaners and additives for fuel and all kinds of stuff in there that you will buy if you own a boat, no question about it, and will cost you more than what's in the bucket or the price of admittance. So, and not to mention there's giveaways and raffles and drawings and all kinds of stuff. So all that's a lot of fun. And the after party was a blast. The after party is really great. Free beer and good food over at Bass Pro Shops. And so that was a lot of fun. But anyway, I learned something, and that's important. If you get a chance to go to one of these, go. He only does about, I'm going to say 8 to 10 of them a year. He's in a circuit right now, and unfortunately, those are my friends that are listening to this from Fort Myers. He's already been there, and here, and I think Dania. I think he did Dania Beach, and then he's going to go up north now. I think he's on his way up to Connecticut or someplace cold. I think North Carolina and Connecticut, someplace cold. So keep that in mind, though. Keep an eye out for next year when he does the 38th annual one, and by all means, go. I can't recommend it enough. Before I get off that subject, I have to tell you, we met a good friend of mine, and this is one of those situations where your charter customer becomes your friend. That happens a lot in the charter business. It's one of the greatest things. That's one of the things I enjoyed most about chartering was these people become friends over the long haul. And especially when you retire, when you quit chartering, they're still your buddy. And I want to shout out to Larry Friels. Larry, I know you listen every now and then or when you get a chance. And we ran into him in Islamorada. He was doing the same thing I was doing, going to trying to learn a little bit more. And in the parking lot, he gave us a tub of smoked wahoo. Wahoo! And let me tell you what, I texted him later after we sampled it, and I told him, I said, man, Jonelle and I have had smoked fish from everywhere and every place and everybody you can imagine, and that was by far and away the best we've had. He really knows how to smoke fish. Not too smoky, which I do not like fish just smoked to death. Not too smoky, nice flavor in it. You can still taste the fact that it's wahoo, and then a tiny little bit of jalapeno in it. Not just enough to give you a little back of the throat burn, but nothing that takes the flavor away. And so, Larry, thank you very much. After our crazy weekend where we were all over the Keys for 2 days, we got home, had a couple cocktails, and put that dip on crackers. And I got to be honest with you, that was delicious. So thanks a bunch. So now let's back up to Friday. Yeah, this whole crazy nonsense started on Friday. Janelle and I headed down to Key West on Friday for the Mac McAnally concert at the Key West Theater, which is downtown in Old Town. It's a small theater, holds about 250, 260 people or so. It was really neat. That's where they had the last Jimmy Buffett concerts. If you were able to see those before the man passed away, the last things he did was like about 3 concerts in Key West, and that's where they held those. So it was in the same location. Mac was the main man when it came to writing songs with Jimmy Buffett and a lot of other artists, Kenny Chesney and folks like that. Mac is 10-time Musician of the Year, member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I mean, it's just amazing. This guy is wonderful when he does a live show. I would not miss it. If you have the opportunity to see Mac McAnally play anywhere in your vicinity, go. It's a very kind of hometown feel. You sit nice and quietly. He plays wonderful ballads and old-time music, and he plays Buffett tunes the way they were originally written and things like that. And I really, really enjoy it. But what we learned the other night, it was a sad, happy night because Mac is returning to Key West for the first time since Buffett passed away. And it was his storytelling. He had stories about all the songs and how they were written and the circumstances behind it, and about the ones that took days to write and the ones that took hours to write. And I'm an old songwriter. I wrote songs back in the 90s. They just suddenly got published. Oh my God. Anyway, by the way, 2 more got picked up. So I'm getting really overly thrilled about this. Found a whole new vocation. Anyway, it was great listening to him talk about that stuff, and there were some sad eyes. I mean, he would place one thing he snuck up on us with was really, really catching. He did Come Monday kind of out of the blue. He was doing some talking, he stopped, the lights kind of went down, and he did Come Monday. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. I really don't. That was quite the moment. I looked at Janelle that she was just doing the mini sob. And so, but she wasn't alone. You know, it's like, God, man, what a moment that was. But anyway, 49 years. That's how long Mac has been playing and doing the stuff that he was doing with Jimmy. And that's pretty impressive. And the stories he told were great. So by the way, so as I said, if you can get a ticket and you can go to one of his shows somewhere near you, by all means do it. You won't regret it. Now, here's some good news. Although all 4 nights in Key West were sold out, they decided to record our night. So I thought that was pretty cool, the Friday night. He started on Thursday. We were the Friday. The Friday was supposed to be the original night, so they may have scheduled something that they weren't able to undo. But they recorded Friday night, and it will be available on the Margaritaville radio, which is on Sirius XM. Now, they didn't give us a date. They don't know, to tell you the truth. I'm sure they have to grab it, edit, and do all the fun things they do. But they say they're going to play what we got to see and hear. Well, you won't get to see it. You get to hear it on Radio Margaritaville. So stand by. And if I find out, I'll announce it in a podcast. But otherwise, keep an eye on Facebook and Instagram and anywhere else you get information on that kind of stuff. And hopefully you'll get to hear it too, because it was definitely worth it. So after the show ended, which was about 10:15 or so, we headed back up the road, spent the night in Marathon. Thank you, Marriott, for upgrading our room. We had a beautiful view of the bay, and it's good to be a Marriott, whatever the heck we are, platinum card holder or whatever the heck it is. Stay in enough Marriotts, yeah, you can work your way right up the ladder and get upgrades and fun stuff. Then we took off for the seminar on Saturday morning. So the whole reason we did Marathon instead of riding home is just, first of all, it's too far at 10:15 at night. I don't know if any of you have done the Key drive at night. Let me tell you what, the 7 Mile Bridge is very exciting in the dark. Yes, it is. It's like a road to nowhere. Very, very weird, especially late at night. But we made it. So the next morning we got up, went up to Islamorada, and did the seminar. And that was a lot of fun. So, but I got to tell you what, we now realize we're old. So today being Sunday was kickback day. We seriously laid back, then went up to the hideout and had breakfast, which, by the way, they've added fish and grits to their menu. So there you go. Now you know where to go have breakfast. And Janelle has gone for a nice long walk. She said, I'm going to go up to the park and just do a nice leisurely walk. So that's what happens. So you get older, you start to relax. My new book is coming along nicely. I think I told you all last week that I've devoted my efforts to that, and I certainly have. I've gotten the manuscript mostly fully completed and edited at home. Then it goes to what I call the real editor. And right now I'm positioning pictures, and that's really fun. You got to get the photos in just the right place and write the captions and do all that fun stuff. And you got to get all those listed out with the manuscript to make sure they wind up where they're supposed to be. So anyway, I originally put a date out there, and I said, well, we're going to have this book out. I remember telling you all it was going to be summer. I went back and looked at my notes and went, oh, crap. What's this now? late winter. Well, winter for us, hardcore winter for other people, but we're getting close to spring. I'm no longer making a date on the release of this thing, so we'll get it when we get it. All right, it's coming. Don't worry, I'll let you know. All right. So the title this week is Another Week in the Keys. I mentioned that at the very beginning, and it's just that, there was Janelle and I did a lot of talking. We don't get to face a lot. She's been very, very, very busy with her job. And when she's not doing that, I'm writing. And we managed to get to the dinner table at the same time, but that usually involves something to watch on Netflix. So yeah, we really have to do more talking. We've been married a long time and we still talk. Yeah. I mean, that's the good part. So when we got to the Keys, of course, in Islamorada, we were able to, we spend time together because we're together, and life in the Keys is just quite different. And what I got out of it, what I gleaned from all this, is that we are no longer visitors. And something that you discover just talking and seeing other people that are out and about, they're visiting. And I remember what visiting like. Visiting was more or less like trying to get everything done in a matter of days. You know what I mean? Like quickly. Like you get this list of stuff and you might be there for like a long weekend, 2 days, 2.5 days, maybe 3, with the holiday, or you might be there for a whole week or maybe 2, but you're still doing this mad rush. You're still doing, got to get this done. And my attitude has been like that for many months since moving to Key Largo. And now it's reached a point now, this is home. And so I still have this inclination to get things really done, but what I need to be doing is relax more. And I need to kick back more. And she does too. She needs to kick back a lot more, but that's a whole nother story. We could do a whole podcast on that, but just not right now. But we talked about this while we were having dinner in Key West. We're sitting at Pepe's, which is one of our favorite places. If you haven't been to Pepe's, go. It is the oldest operating restaurant in Florida, and the second oldest in all of Florida. I think that's what it is. Oldest in Key West by far. Delicious food. And they were having a surf and turf special. So you know me and you know Janelle. That's right. Filet mignons and Florida lobster. Oh, yeah. So, but we were sitting there over dinner just chit-chatting. It's the first time we've been face-to-face talking in quite a while. And we're both rapidly reaching the point of where recreation is becoming more and more important to us. And we want to do relaxing recreation. I'm not talking about mountain climbing. Y'all can do that if you want. It's okay. I'm not. I don't dive anymore, to tell you the truth. I snorkel. I enjoy snorkeling quite a bit, but I just don't have the desire to go diving anymore. I did for a while, but at my age now, I don't think so. Every time somebody dies diving, it's always some dude at 65 years old. Or I thought, the writing's on the wall. You probably shouldn't do that anymore. I'm just saying. So anyway, we're looking for ways to kind of relax and take it easy. I no longer feel like I'm trying to cram for an exam. I think that's the only way I can put it. Rush about, be busy. I like what I do. I like writing because I can take my time writing. I've been under the gun with with this publishing thing, trying to get this done. But no, and the same thing with the songs. Two more of my songs just got picked up. And the guy that's producing the songs, he's laid back. He says, we'll start on them next week and we'll do this. And I said, Billy, that's great. Let's just take your time. I know he's busy. He's busier than hell. And he plays almost every night somewhere in the Keys and does the producing work in the studio. And I said, it's okay, man. So I'm trying to kick back and just get into what it's like to be living in the Keys. I've also noticed a personal change in the way that I look at fishing. It's still a sport, and it's still important, but the way I approach it now is from a much more relaxed way. I want to catch fish, don't get me wrong, but I don't get, if I don't get but a few, it's still a good day. I think the pressure of myself comes directly from my days when I was a fishing guide, so I put that on me when I go out. But I don't need to do that anymore. I'm not there to perform. It's not a tournament. It's not a paying customer. It's me, little old me. And it took a while. It took a while for me to relax and just stop and look around. I am in a place that people pay big bucks to get to for a week, as I mentioned before. Airplane flights, hotel reservations, resort reservations, dinner out, feed everybody, including the kids a lot of times, and the guy and the gal, they just want to get out there and catch some fish, and they want to make sure they catch what they've seen on TV and and you get into this rut. I'm not there anymore. I don't do that. I'm not here to take people fishing. I'm here to take me fishing, and Janelle, of course. But the idea now is it should be relaxing. You don't need to perform every day. Plain and simple. I just need to relax. I take my friends out. That might be where I put a little more pressure on myself, but quite frankly, they have to understand too that I'm not guiding anymore. So what I really want people to do when we go out on the boat is I want them to have fun and experience what's here in the Keys through the beauty of the place, along with the wildlife and catching fish. I want them to get that feeling. When you go out there, that feeling comes over you all of a sudden. You'll hit a spot out there in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and you look around and realize, you know what? I haven't seen a soul in the last hour. I haven't heard a boat. I haven't heard an airplane. I haven't heard anything. Nothing but the chirping of a bird every now and then. It's all I've heard, in the splash of a fish. That's when you realize that you've really arrived in the Florida Keys. That's when you know that you're in a spot that's really, really special. Yeah, it's fun to be at the party. Yes, it's fun to be at the live music places along Duval Street. It's fun to be in the hubbub of it. But let me tell you what, that's not really what the Florida Keys are about. The Florida Keys, especially as a resident, is about getting away from it all and putting that thing in your head. I cannot tell you the relaxation that it brings on when you suddenly realize that, you know what, this is really a great place to hide. Don't tell anybody, And catching a fish is simply nothing more than icing on the cake. And that's pretty much the way I view it now. So come on down. I'll be understanding. I know you're trying to get everything done in 2 or 3 days, but the reality is, once you live here, man, it took a long time. I will confess, it's been a year and a half now since we moved here, and it's taken a long time for me to wind down. It really has. And I look around now at other people in the neighborhood, and I realize they figured it out a long time ago. I'm catching up. I'm just catching up to this whole idea of it's time to relax, and it's time to just take it one day at a time. Turn off the news. That's probably the best thing you can do. Come to the Keys and turn off the news. There you go.
And now, from the original book of useless information.
You are a reject! You are useless! You can get a job down here cleaning toilets!
Here's your host, Captain Rob Modies.
Well, he swears up and down he's useless, but
he might be all right eventually, but completely useless.
With useless information.
Oh my gosh, it's that time again. By the way, thank you so much for the notes about adding this to the show. I'm glad you like it. I really am. I wasn't real sure, and I thought, you know what? Why not? Okay, so here we go. I generally do 3 of these. For those who've never heard these before, we're going to start with number 1. Most people button their shirts upwards. I don't. I start about in the middle, to be honest with you. Maybe that's really unusual, but most people button their shirts from the bottom up. So, number 2, in 1955, 1/3 of all watches sold were Timexes. I had quite a few of those, which that means that the ticking did take a licking. So, for those of you that are aware of their motto, yeah. I did. I've had a lot of Timex watches. That was the thing, I can remember one that was really cool. It looked like it was outdoorsy. It looked like a camping watch. Number 3, there are more Barbie dolls in Italy than there are Canadians in Canada. Hey, who's watching that movie? That movie was the rage. I didn't make it all the way through. I'll have to go back and actually watch it. And there you go. That'll have to hold you all until next week's podcast. Spend some time outside, folks, if you can. Layer up if you got to. Don't worry, summer's coming. Really. Well, yeah, really, it is. It's coming. For some of you, it's going to be a little longer than others, but it's coming. And actually down here in Florida, we kind of, I'll be honest with you, we do relish the cooler weather. We kid about it. We joke about it. We go, gosh, we wish it would go away. But in all honesty, come next September, we'll be just praying for it to get cool again. So it's just this constant up and down. So, but if you're too cold where you live, come on down here. It's really nice. Again, today's high is going to be in the 80s. Now over the next week, it's going to be in the maybe it might make 70, but it's probably a whole lot better than 12. So anyway, come on down if you can. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks to those that continue to support the podcast, especially over the past few years. If you enjoy listening, please tell a friend, leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Facebook page is Catch Outdoors. The website is catchoutdoors.com, where you can find all the previous podcasts and a schedule of what's coming up. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.